You're booking the clients, your revenue is increasing, cash is hitting your bank account, but for some reason, you still feel broke. Does this sound like you? I see this all the time with business owners that I work with. They come to me and say, I feel like my business is doing great, my income is increasing, but for some reason, I still feel broke. Why is that? It's probably not because you don't have enough income coming into your business. It's probably some structural things that we need to look at. Welcome back to Money Breath Magic. Today in this video, I'm gonna talk you through why your business feels like it's doing well, but you still feel broke. And we're actually gonna do this in a two-part series because on this channel, we always talk about the strategic lens, but we also talk about the mindset, the energetics, and the nervous system lens that you may not be thinking about and how that might be influencing you feeling broke. So in part one of this series, I'm gonna break down the 4 structural things that you might be doing in your business that are keeping you broke, or at least feeling broke. And then in part 2, I'm gonna break down the mindset shifts that you need to be making and the nervous system responses that might be getting triggered that are keeping you feeling like you are broke. So hi, if we haven't met before, I'm Sue Ellen. I'm a CPA, fractional CFO, breathwork and somatics facilitator, Reiki practitioner, and money coach. And I like to look at the holistic lens of money. On many channels, they focus on the strategy side of money and finance, but here we look at it full picture. The masculine strategy and the feminine, the mindset, the nervous system, and the energetics, because we need all of this to be successful with money and to be successful in business. All right, so let's dive into the 4 structural things that you need to look at and understand in your business to see why you are feeling like you are broke. But a prerequisite is if you are not looking at your numbers on a regular basis and you are a business owner, that is the first step of homework that I have for you. You need to have a recurring process that you are getting familiar with these numbers that we're going to talk about today, because you can't grow a business, you can't understand why you're feeling broke if you are avoiding and not looking at your numbers. Stay tuned for part 2 of this series, because that is where we're going to dive really deep into why you might actually be avoiding your numbers and not prioritizing your money. All right, so number 1, the first thing that you need to understand in your business is revenue does not equal profit. So let's break down what exactly is revenue, what is profit, and what is cash flow. Your revenue, pretty much everyone knows what this number is. It's your sales. It's the income that you have coming in from your customers, from your clients, what's getting deposited in your bank account when you make a sale. We all love revenue and everyone loves to talk about revenue. You see this all the time on social media. People are always boasting and posting of, I hit 10K months, 20K months, 30K months, 100K months, And while that's great, we love to see high revenue numbers in our business. It isn't what matters when we think about why I'm feeling broke, because you could have huge revenue numbers, but if you also have huge expense numbers, what's left over, profit, is what's actually more important. Going back to the people that are bragging on the internet about how much their revenue numbers are, say someone they said, I have $1 million in revenue this year, and they're celebrating hitting the $1 million mark. If their cost and their expenses to run their business are $950,000, that makes their net profit only $50,000. Meanwhile, you could have a business where you don't have a lot of expenses and maybe your revenue is only $200,000, much less than that $1 million mark. But if your expenses are only $50,000 to run that business, your net profit in that scenario is $150,000. So even though your income, your revenue was $800,000 less than this person that's bragging on the internet that they hit $1 million, your net profit is $100,000 more than this person who made the $1 million mark. So the lesson here is if you don't know what your actual profit margins are, you don't know what that net profit number is, that is your first step of homework. Go into your accounting system, whether that's QuickBooks or Xero, however you're keeping track of your finances. Look at your revenue, back out all of your expenses and see how much is left over. Revenue is somewhat of a vanity number. Again, it's what everybody likes to brag about online. Profit is what you keep. Profit is what matters. The second thing on the strategic side of things that I need you to look at is your expenses. And so this, again, in the equation, revenue minus expenses, this is how we get to our profit. So we need to back up and we need to look at our expense calculation. So again, we have tons of revenue coming in the business, but we still feel like we're broke. This expense bucket is what might be an issue. So if we look at our expenses, we have two types of expenses. You'll have your direct costs and your indirect costs. Your direct costs are the costs related to providing the service that you provide in your business. And then you have indirect costs, which a lot of times are referred to as overhead costs. So that could be things like your rent and your utilities, your insurance, those things that are not directly related to providing your product or service to your customers and community. And so I want to give you a little metaphor, an analogy here, and I want you to think about a water hose. And the water is circulating through the hose. Think of the water that is coming through the hose as your revenue. It's the income that is flowing through your business. And then I want you to think about holes being put into the hose. And so water is obviously going to leak out of the hose. All of those holes are the expenses in your business. Obviously, the more holes that you have and the more bigger the holes are, the more revenue, the more water is going to leak out of the hose and not get to its ending destination at the end of the hose. And so we want to get any of these holes in your hose plugged up as much as possible. And so that's why we need to do an expense audit in your business. Some of the easiest things that you can look at your subscription payments. This is always a black hole in many people's businesses. We sign up for so much stuff. It's so easy these days just to sign up on stuff on our phone and then we forget about it. We never look at it again. Another area that you can look at is your insurance payments. A lot of times we just have insurance through whether it's our car or home or rent or business, and we never look at switching insurance providers. Go look and shop around rates. Most of the time, if you switch insurance providers, it's very simple and you can actually get a much better rate than you would if you just stay with the same provider every single year. So go look at some of those sneaky little expenses that may have gotten into your business inadvertently, and maybe you're just like forgotten about them. But one thing I want to consider, and this happens all of the time in our personal life and in our business, as our income increases, as revenue is increasing, what tends to happen is we have what's called lifestyle creep, where because we have more income coming in, therefore we start spending more. And maybe it's on things that are like kind of frivolous and that we don't actually need. A way to see this in your business is look at your P&L, go into your accounting system and run your profit and loss statement for a period of time, depending on how long you've been in business, to where you can see comparative years or you can see comparative months. And if you look at your income, and if it's increasing and you see all of your expenses increasing along with it, that means that your profit margin is going to be staying the same as on a percentage basis. So let's look at this as an example. So like in the example that I am showing, you can see that the income is growing year over year. The income is growing. But the direct costs, you would expect those to grow along with your income. Because again, direct costs are the costs that it takes to provide the product or service in your business. So it makes sense that as the number of services that you're providing or the number of products that you're selling, that the cost to provide that service is going to grow along with it. That makes sense. The problem tends to lie in the overhead cost area of the business. And so what tends to happen is business owners see that their income is growing and saying, oh, I have more money in my bank account. So they start spending on extra upgrades that they don't need. And they're like maybe office, or they're buying stuff for themselves that they don't actually need. Start investing in things that aren't important to them or not a priority in their business. And so you get this what's called lifestyle creep. So some homework for this step is to go into your accounting system, Look at your profit and loss statement, comparative periods, and see if you can see where perhaps maybe you've started spending a little bit more. Maybe you've started shopping a little bit more, buying more office supplies. Maybe you're going out to eat more than you had in the past. Look and see if you're noticing any lifestyle creep within your expense buckets. The next one, number 3, you might just not be paying yourself properly. It's just a cash flow problem and how you're actually facilitating your cash payments. I would say this is probably the number one reason why business owners feel broke is because they don't have a handle on their cash flow. So the first thing that I recommend you doing is setting up multiple bank accounts so you can segregate your cash and it's not all sitting in one checking account. My favorite bank to do this with is Relay Bank. They are absolutely amazing. It's an online banking system where you can have multiple, I think it's like up to 20, 25 accounts, checking and savings accounts for no additional fees. And what this allows us to do is we can set up different bank accounts for different purposes. I'm gonna drop a link below in the description if you're interested in signing up. So if we think to way back before online banking ever existed, and we had our parents and our grandparents, they were using something called the envelope methodology. You may have heard this. What they would do back then is they would have different envelopes where when they got their paycheck, they would then segregate that cash and put it into different envelopes for different purposes. So they say they were saving for a family vacation, or they were saving for a house or a car, or even their taxes. They would take the money, the cash that they got, and they would divvy it up into the different envelopes. It's the exact same thing. It's just all on the interwebs now. And so what Relay Bank allows you to do is set up different bank accounts for your taxes, for your owner's pay. This is a big one. Set up money for different investments or savings goals that you have. Set up an account for your operating expenses. You can get as detailed with this as you want or not. I have business owners who have 3 accounts, 4 accounts. I personally have 5 separate accounts that I use for my business. The whole point is to get your cash out of one single account and divvy it up amongst the priorities and the necessities in your business so you can truly see how much money you have for each goal in your business. If all of your money is sitting in one checking account, like so many business owners do, you can't tell how much cash is reserved for taxes, expenses, investments, savings, and to pay yourself. And so we have to understand our cash flow. Every single dollar that comes into your business should have a purpose. If we already have a purpose for our money before the money even gets deposited into the account, this is going to help you manage your cash flow and make sure that you are always paying yourself. All right, and then the fourth and last thing structurally that might be going on is you might be in this like feast or famine cycle. That tends to happen. I see this a lot with online business owners and service providers because they might be launching a new program or launching a new coaching program, and they have someone pay in full for a 6-month program. So they have this like big influx of money one month, and then the following months are lighter. And so what can happen is you get into this kind of like chaotic nervous system response, which we're gonna talk about in part 2, so stay tuned for that. But it's like on these big income months, you feel, I can breathe, like there's money coming in, and then you're able to spend freely and you feel comfortable with what's going on in your business. And then the next month it's, shoot, what is going on? Like I need to pump the brakes, no spending, I'm stressed, I'm freaking out, I gotta hurry up and like launch something. And it's like this constant cycle of I feel safe, I can breathe, and I'm stressed out and I'm freaking out, you know, and we wanna get out of this cycle. And so how we do this is through cash flow planning, but we also do this through having a cash reserve, or you've probably heard this called an emergency fund. I like to call it an opportunity fund, or I recently heard it called a freedom fund, and I actually like that. I think I'm gonna steal that one. So let's call this our freedom fund. And this is where you have 3 to 6 to 12 months of your expenses socked away, and I would put it in a high yield savings account to be able to use and tap into on some of these like lower income months if necessary. That's first going to give you a safety net. And so if we go back to what we just talked about in part 3, having your different cash account buckets, part of your allocation could be moving money into your freedom fund until that's built up and you feel like you have a comfortable safety net sitting there for the lower income months. The other thing is we want to do a cash flow forecast every single year, and you want to be looking at this at least on a quarterly basis so you know what's expected to come out of the bank account in the next quarter. Every single year, I blow out my own P&L, and I recommend and help all my clients do this, is we look at their full year and say, okay, when are we expecting your annual expenses to come out, your subscriptions, your insurance payments, if you have any sort of like property taxes, when are you gonna have to pay your income tax payments? When are these like one-time costs gonna come out? And so we know when the cash is expected to move out of the bank account. This is so you can be prepared. So when you get these high income months, you know that you have to be reserved for these cash expenses that are gonna come out in the next 6 months. So some things to do here, if you don't have a freedom fund already built, start allocating some of your income and slowly build up that fund to where you have a number of months. This is all based on your risk tolerance, whatever you prefer. 3 to 6 months is a great place to start. So you have that and you can feel safe that you are covered if you do have an income dip in your business, which is inevitable. It happens for everybody. Number 2 is making sure that you're looking at your cash flow forecast. What expenses do I plan to come out for the remainder of this year? And so this is gonna help you feel safe and know when you expect these cash outflows to come out, and you know that you can reserve your cash and what needs to be in the bank account, the operating expense account, for these future cash out expenses. All right, so let's just recap the 4 things that we went through today. Number 1, you may just not have an awareness of your numbers and not know that revenue does not equal profit. Maybe you have a business where you have a lot of revenue coming in through the door, but your profit margins are really low. So the amount that you get to keep is not enough to sustain your life. So go back and look at your numbers, understand what your profit margins are, and see if you have something to address there. Number 2, you might have an expense problem, which is going to lead to the low profit margin problem. Go look at your expenses, review any costs that may be creeping up. So are you experiencing any lifestyle creep or business expense creep as your income grows? Are your expenses growing along with it? Go audit your expenses and look and make sure that you don't have the holes in the hose that we talked about. Number 3, you have a cash flow management problem and you aren't paying yourself consistently. Go look at how you have your cash flow set up. Do you have separate bank accounts reserved for all the areas in your business? Your operating expenses, paying yourself, that needs to be part of every single month, whether it's $50 or it's a percentage of your income. Pay yourself first. Do you have an account for taxes, your savings and investment? If you don't already have separate accounts set up, go set it up. Relay Bank is an awesome option for this, and start managing your cash now. And then number 4, you might be in a feast or famine cycle where you have this roller coaster of income and you aren't planning for your cash expenses that are coming out in the future. So if that's you, go build a cash flow forecast and get an understanding and knowledge of what cash is meant to come out of your account in the future and start planning for that now. Second thing is, if you don't have your cash freedom fund, it's your emergency fund built up of 3 to 6 months of your business expenses. Start allocating money now from your income into your freedom fund to where you have this safety net built so you don't feel broke. All right, so those are the 4 structural things that I want you to look at if you still feel broke, but your income is still growing in your business. But here's the thing. With all of the business owners that I have been working with over the years, I have seen that even if they have all the structure in place, all the systems in place, they can still feel broke if it's in the mind. What we don't realize is we have stories playing in our head, and that's driving our mindset, the way we think, and in our nervous system that can still have us feeling broke even if we're making a ton of money. And so that's what we're gonna break down in part 2 of this series. So hit subscribe so you don't miss that video dropping next week. Let me know in the comments which of the 4 things that you are going to be implementing in your business this month, and I'm gonna hold you to it. I will see you next week for part 2 of this series. Have an amazing week ahead, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.